They laughed when they poured juice over Emily Sawyer's wheelchair. The disabled girl simply lowered her head. Another day of torment at Lincoln High. No one helped, except Kayla, the new student with haunted eyes and scars no one could see. While the popular kids ruled through fear, and teachers looked away, Kayla recognized a truth others missed. Emily's quiet dignity reflected her own buried pain. 20 minutes after that humiliation, something shifted at Lincoln High. Not with shouting or dramatic confrontation, but with the calm precision of someone who had learned that true power moves in silence. By the time Hunter Mills and his friends realized they'd targeted the wrong girl, it wasn't just Emily rising from invisibility. It was a reckoning that would leave no one unchanged. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The fall sun cast long shadows across Lincoln High's brick facade as Kayla Walker approached the front gates. Her steps were measured and unhurried, bag slung carelessly over one shoulder as her dark eyes scanned the bustling courtyard. Students clustered in familiar groups, their laughter and chatter creating a wall of sound that washed over her without penetration. Kayla's posture radiated a quiet confidence that made several heads turn, but her expression remained neutral, almost detached. She wore simple jeans and a plain navy hoodie that seemed deliberately chosen to attract no attention. Yet there was something in the way she carried herself, shoulders squared, chin slightly lifted, that made people look twice. Group of girls near the entrance whispered as she passed, but Kayla didn't acknowledge them. She'd been the new girl 3 times before. She knew how this worked. "That's the new transfer," one girl murmured. "Heard she's from Chicago." Kayla kept walking, mentally mapping the school layout. New building, same ecosystem. She could already identify the social layers unfolding around her, the loud ones who controlled the space, the middling masses desperate for approval, and the invisible ones hugging the perimeter. She belonged to none of them. Not anymore. On the opposite side of campus, a white van pulled up to the accessible entrance. The vehicle's side door slid open with a mechanical whir, and a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a kind smile emerged first. She moved to the back of the van, where a ramp slowly descended. "Ready for another day, sweetheart?" Mrs. Sawyer asked as she helped guide her daughter's wheelchair down the ramp. Emily Sawyer nodded, her mousy brown hair falling across her face. She wore a simple cardigan over a floral dress, arranged carefully to cover the contours of her legs. Her backpack hung from the handles of her wheelchair, along with a worn leather art folder. "I've got that test in Baker's class," she said quietly. "You studied all weekend. You'll do great." Her mother squeezed her shoulder. "I'll pick you up at the usual spot at 3:30. Emily nodded again, her fingers adjusting the placement of her folder. "Thanks, Mom." As Mrs. Sawyer drove away, Emily took a deep breath and rolled herself toward the entrance. Students flowed around her like water around a stone, no one meeting. Her eyes, no one offering help with the heavy door. The janitor, Mr. Collins, saw her struggling and held it open. "Morning, Emily." "Morning, Mr. Collins. Thank you." It was their daily exchange, the only reliable greeting Emily received. Inside, the hallways were a current of motion and noise. Emily navigated the edges, well practiced at avoiding backpacks and careless feet. She'd been at Lincoln High for 3 years now. She knew its rhythms, its blind spots, and most importantly, which hallways to avoid. The morning passed in a blur of classes, with Kayla observing everything and speaking only when called upon. Teachers introduced her with varying degrees of enthusiasm, and students quickly lost interest when she offered minimal information about herself. In third period history, she noticed a girl in a wheelchair sitting by the window, head bent over her notebook, practically invisible to everyone around her. By lunch, Kayla had formed a complete assessment of Lincoln High. Same hierarchy, different faces. She carried her tray to an empty table near the edge of the courtyard and ate methodically, watching. The cafeteria doors swung open, and Emily wheeled herself out into the sunlight. She had packed her own lunch as usual, safer than navigating the lunch line. She found her regular spot, a table with a missing bench that accommodated her wheelchair. No one joined her. No one ever did. From his position holding court at the center table, Hunter Mills noticed Emily unpacking her lunch. He nudged his friend Chad Andrews and nodded in her direction. "Watch this," he murmured, a smirk playing across his handsome face. Hunter stood, carrying his tray of half-eaten food and a large cup of red fruit punch. Chad and their friend Logan Peterson followed, laughing at something Hunter whispered. They walked directly toward Emily's table. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Hunter's foot accidentally caught on a crack in the concrete. He stumbled forward dramatically, arms flailing. The fruit punch sailed through the air in a perfect arc, splashing across Emily's head and shoulders, drenching her hair, face, and cardigan in sticky red liquid. Some of it dripped down onto her art folder, immediately soaking through the leather. "Oh, shit," Hunter exclaimed with exaggerated concern. "My bad, didn't see you there." The courtyard erupted in laughter. Someone whistled. Emily sat frozen, punch dripping from her hair onto her ruined lunch. "Dude, you didn't see the whole-ass wheelchair?" Logan said loudly, generating another wave of laughter. Emily's face burned as she fumbled for napkins, trying to save her sketchbook. Her fingers trembled as red liquid seeped through the pages, bleeding the lines of her drawings together. Around the courtyard, reactions varied. Most students laughed or simply watched. A few looked uncomfortable but said nothing. One girl half rose from her seat but sat back down when her friends didn't move. Two teachers standing near the cafeteria doors glanced over, frowned, and walked away, pretending not to notice. Phones came out, recording the moment. Emily's humiliation was being preserved, shared, expanded. "Here, let me help," Hunter said, grabbing more napkins and making a show of dabbing at Emily's shoulders, making the mess worse while appearing to help. Emily flinched away from his touch. "Please don't," she whispered. "Just trying to help," Hunter said, hands raised in mock surrender. "Not my fault you're always in the way." From her spot at the perimeter, Kayla watched. Her expression remained neutral, but her hands had stopped moving, her sandwich forgotten. Her eyes tracked Hunter as he high-fived his friends, then locked onto his face when he turned in her direction. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Hunter's smile faltered slightly. Something in Kayla's steady gaze made him uncomfortable, though he couldn't say why. He'd never met her before. She was nobody, just the new girl. But Kayla's mind was elsewhere, recognition flickering behind her eyes. She knew his type. She'd seen it before. The memory of another face, another time, hovered at the edge of her consciousness. Hunter turned away first, rejoining his friends with forced laughter. Emily finally managed to gather her things. With punch still dripping from her hair, she wheeled herself toward the nearest bathroom, leaving a faint trail of red droplets on the concrete. The laughter gradually subsided as students returned to their conversations, the entertainment over. Inside the girls' bathroom, Emily locked herself in the accessible stall. She pulled paper towels from her backpack, she always carried extras, and began wiping the sticky liquid from her hair and face. Tears mixed with the punch, creating pale pink tracks down her cheeks. She bit her lip hard to keep from making any sound. The bathroom door opened and closed several times, other girls coming and going. No one asked if she needed help. Emily carefully removed her art folder from her bag. The leather was stained beyond repair, and when she opened it, her heart sank. Her sketches, weeks of work, were ruined. Colors ran together, paper warped and sticky. She leafed through, hoping to salvage something, but each page was worse than the last. With shaking hands, she dropped the entire folder into the bathroom trash. 3 years at Lincoln High had taught her one thing: invisibility was the best defense. Drawing attention only made things worse. By final period, Emily had changed into her gym clothes, the only spare outfit she had. Her hair was pulled back, still slightly damp, but no longer sticky. She kept her eyes down as she rolled into biology class. Kayla was already there, sitting at a lab table alone. She noticed Emily enter, but gave no indication of recognition. Yet her eyes tracked the girl's movements, noting how the other students subtly shifted away, leaving an empty bubble around the wheelchair. After the final bell, Kayla gathered her things slowly, observing how the hallways worked, who moved for whom, which lockers belonged to which social groups. She noticed Emily waiting by the curb, alone in the afternoon sun. Everyone else had clustered in groups or headed to buses and cars. Kayla approached, stopping a respectful distance away. Without a word, she held out a packet of wet wipes. Emily looked up, startled. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry now. She hesitated, searching Kayla's face for signs of a trick or trap. "They're better than paper towels," Kayla said, her voice low and even. "For sticky stuff." Emily slowly reached out and took the packet. "Thanks." Kayla nodded once, then walked away without another word, leaving Emily staring after her in confusion. That night, Kayla lay on her bed in the small room she'd been given in her uncle's house. The walls were still bare. She hadn't bothered unpacking the few decorations she owned. Why bother? This place was temporary, like all the others. She held her arm up against the dim light, tracing a finger along the thin white scar that ran from her wrist halfway to her elbow. Not deep enough to be dangerous, but enough to be a reminder. In the corner of the room, hanging from her open closet door, a pair of faded boxing gloves swung gently in the breeze from the open window. Kayla closed her eyes, but the images came, anyway. Her brother Andre's face, blood streaming from his nose, eyes wide with shock as the group surrounded him, his voice, calling her name as she screamed for help that never came. The memory fractured, as it always did, into bright shards of pain and regret. She sat up abruptly, breathing hard. 3 years, and it still felt like yesterday. "Not again," she whispered to the empty room. "Not this time." The next morning arrived with overcast skies and the threat of rain. Emily positioned herself at her usual lunch table, this time wearing a plain button-up shirt under a sweater, her hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She had brought only a sandwich today, no art supplies, nothing that couldn't be replaced. Across the courtyard, Hunter and his friends arrived, laughing loudly. Hunter's eyes immediately found Emily, his smile widening as he nudged Chad. "Ready for round 2?" he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Emily didn't look up, but her shoulders tensed, her hands frozen over her lunch. Hunter picked up his water bottle and started walking toward her. But as he passed another table, he jostled someone's elbow, causing a student to spill their drink. It was a minor incident, just enough to distract him. By the time he looked back toward Emily, his moment had passed. Irritated, he returned to his friends. Emily slowly released the breath she'd been holding. She raised her head and looked across the courtyard, somehow knowing exactly where to find Kayla. Their eyes met. No words were exchanged, no acknowledgement given. But something passed between them, a current of understanding, the recognition of shared isolation. The fuse was lit. The following afternoon, Emily wheeled herself toward the south exit, her usual pickup spot. She was surprised to find Kayla leaning against the wall nearby, apparently waiting for someone. For a moment, Emily considered taking a different route, uncertain of this new dynamic. Before she could decide, Kayla spoke without looking at her. "Your wheel's sticky." Emily glanced down and noticed dried red residue on her right wheel, leaving a faint mark on the floor with each rotation. "It's fine," she said quietly. Kayla pushed off from the wall. "No, it's not. It'll gum up the bearing." She knelt down, examining the wheel more closely. "You got cleaning supplies at home?" Emily nodded hesitantly. "The rim's okay, but check the axle tonight. That punch has sugar in it. Sugar attracts ants." Emily stared at her, taken aback by the practical advice. "How do you know about wheelchairs?" Kayla stood, brushing off her jeans. "I don't. I know about bearings." She paused, then added, "My brother had one for a while. Different model." A car horn honked from the curb. Emily's mother. "That's my ride," Emily said, still confused by the interaction. Kayla stepped back, hands in her pockets. See you around. 3 days later, they found themselves alone in the art room during lunch. Emily had returned, finally, with a new sketchbook. Kayla had wandered in looking for a quiet place to eat. You can stay, Emily offered when Kayla turned. To leave. Nobody comes in here during lunch. Kayla hesitated, then took a seat at a table across from Emily. They ate in silence for several minutes. What are you drawing? Kayla eventually asked. Emily turned her sketchbook around. It was a portrait of a senior girl named Melissa, but not as she appeared in real life. In Emily's drawing, Melissa's smile was fractured, her eyes hollow, her perfect hair wild and unkempt. That's really good, Kayla said, studying the image. Dark. I draw what people don't show, Emily explained, her voice gaining confidence. The stuff underneath. She flipped to another page. A boy from their history class. His face half hidden behind a mask of forced laughter, tears visible only in his eyes. You see a lot from that chair, don't you? Kayla observed. Emily nodded. Nobody really looks at me, so I can look at everyone. She hesitated, then turned to a page near the back of her sketchbook. It showed a figure in a wheelchair, clearly Emily, with her head bowed. Standing behind her was another figure, face obscured in shadow, hands outstretched protectively. I drew this last night, Emily said softly. Kayla said nothing, but her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Over the next week, Kayla observed the intricate social ecosystem of Lincoln High. She noticed how certain teachers always seemed to be looking elsewhere when Hunter and his friends approached other students. She saw how freshmen scrambled to clear a path when the football players walked down the hall, how girls laughed at jokes that weren't funny when popular boys made them. Most importantly, she noticed who else was targeted. A freshman boy with a stutter, a girl with severe acne, a boy rumored to be gay. The pattern was familiar, almost predictable. The strong preyed on the vulnerable, and everyone else pretended not to see. It was survival through silence. During history class, Mr. Reeves assigned a project on civil rights movements. While students paired up around them, Kayla and Emily found themselves the last two without partners. Walker, Sawyer, you'll work together, Mr. Reeves said without looking up from his desk. That afternoon, they met in the library. As Emily outlined their project approach, Kayla's mind drifted, catching on a memory that had been haunting her dreams. It was 3 years ago. She and Andre were walking home from school in Chicago, taking their usual route through the park. Andre was 18, college-bound, brilliant. Kayla was 14, gangly and quiet, walking in her brother's shadow. They hadn't seen the group coming. 5 boys from a rival school who thought Andre was someone else, someone who had apparently disrespected one of them at a party. Hey, Richardson, the leader had called out. Andre turned, confused. That's not me, man. But they weren't listening. They surrounded them quickly, pushing Kayla aside. One grabbed Andre's backpack. Wait, Andre had started to say. The first punch caught him in the stomach, doubling him over. Then came another to his face. Stop! Kayla screamed, throwing herself at one of the boys. That's not Richardson, his name is Walker. Someone shoved her hard. She fell, hitting her head on the pavement. Blood trickled into her eyes as she watched them beat her brother. She screamed for help. People walked by on the street, averting their eyes. No one stopped. No one helped. The time the police arrived, Andre wasn't moving. 3 days later, he was gone. A brain hemorrhage, the doctor said. Kayla had been shipped off to the first of several foster homes. Her mother lost to grief and alcohol. Kayla, did you hear me? Emily's voice snapped her back to the present. The library light seemed too bright. Sorry, what? Kayla blinked rapidly. I asked if you wanted to focus on the 60s or something more recent. Kayla rubbed her temples. Whatever, works for you. Emily studied her for a moment. Are you okay? Fine, Kayla said shortly. Just remembering something. That evening, in the garage of her uncle's modest home, Kayla wrapped her hands carefully before hitting the heavy bag suspended. From the ceiling, her uncle Darius watched from the doorway, arms crossed. Your form is sloppy today, he observed, Your mind's elsewhere. Kayla corrected her stance and threw another combination. Just tired. Darius stepped forward, adjusting her elbow slightly. Remember what I taught you, control first, power second, always. He held the bag steady as she hit it again, her knuckles connecting with a satisfying thud. Speed drills, he instructed. 10 sets, then pressure points. For the next hour, he guided her through the familiar routine. Combinations that required precision and restraint rather than brute force. Defense, control, distance management. Kayla moved with the fluid grace of someone who had trained for years. You're distracted, Darius said as they finished. School trouble? Kayla unwrapped her hands. Just the usual. Darius eyed her skeptically. Just remember what we agreed. You don't fight unless you must. And when you do, end it fast. Kayla finished, her voice flat. I know. I didn't take you in so you could get expelled from another school. Kayla met his gaze levelly. I haven't touched anyone. Keep it that way. He tossed her a towel. Dinner's in 10. The following day, Emily was late to art class. When she finally arrived, her eyes were red, her hands shaking slightly as she set up her materials. What happened? Kayla asked quietly. Emily shook her head, unwilling to speak. But when class ended, she lingered until the room emptied. Chad broke my special pencils during second period, she finally said. The ones I can grip properly. And Logan started telling people I wear diapers. Her voice cracked. I have normal, it's not. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Kayla understood exactly what rumor would follow Emily now, how it would spread, how it would stick regardless of truth. I'm sorry, Kayla said, the words feeling completely inadequate. After school, Emily locked herself in the accessible bathroom stall, trying to regain her composure before her mother arrived. She didn't hear the outer door open, but she recognized Kayla's sneakers under the stall door. I'm fine, Emily called out, her voice betraying her. Kayla said nothing, but she didn't leave either. She stood silently by the sinks, offering a presence that somehow made Emily feel less alone. When Emily finally emerged, eyes dry but red-rimmed, Kayla handed her a water bottle without comment. The simple gesture of practical kindness nearly broke Emily's composure again. Thanks, she whispered. That night, long after the school had emptied, a shadow moved across the darkened campus. Security was minimal, one guard who did hourly rounds, predictable as clockwork. Kayla slipped into the gymnasium undetected. In her backpack was a can of black spray paint. She worked quickly and methodically, her movements precise. Across the center of the bleachers in bold, dripping letters she wrote, "You hurt the wrong one." She left no fingerprints, no evidence of her presence. Just words that would greet the entire school the next morning. The graffiti caused exactly the stir she had anticipated. Principal Keller called an emergency assembly, his face red with anger as he demanded the responsible party come forward. Teachers watched students for reactions. Students whispered theories to each other. Hunter and his friends laughed it off publicly. But Kayla noticed how Hunter's eyes scanned the crowd, how his laugh seemed forced, how he kept glancing toward the exits. From across the auditorium, Mr. Reeves watched Kayla with a thoughtful expression. When their eyes met, he didn't look away immediately. Instead, he gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. After the assembly, Emily wheeled herself alongside Kayla as they headed to history class. "It was you, wasn't it?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Kayla didn't answer, but something in her expression confirmed Emily's suspicion. "Don't do anything stupid," Emily warned quietly. "It's not worth it." Kayla stopped walking, turning to face Emily fully. "What's not worth it? Standing up? Fighting back? Because from where I'm standing, letting them hurt you over and over seems pretty stupid." Emily flinched at the harsh words. "You don't understand. Hunter's dad is on the school board. Logan's father is the sheriff. They're untouchable." "No one's untouchable," Kayla replied, her voice cold. "Everyone bleeds." That evening, Kayla sat alone in her bedroom, a small wooden box open on her lap. Inside were newspaper clippings about Andre's death, ruled an accident after the boys. Claimed Andre had attacked them first. There was no justice, no closure, only a case closed too quickly and a family shattered. Beneath the clippings was an old MMA ticket stub, a reminder of the first fight Darius had taken her to, and a torn photograph of her old school in Chicago. At the very bottom lay a small silver medallion on a chain, Andre's St. Christopher medal, given to her by the hospital staff after he died. Kayla closed the box carefully and slid it back under her bed. "Some fights," she whispered to the empty. "Faux poid you finish in silence." Monday morning arrived with a biting autumn chill. Students huddled in the hallways, clutching coffee cups and comparing weekend stories. Kayla moved through the crowd like a ghost, observing everything but drawing no attention to herself. She spotted Chad Matthews at his locker, surrounded by his usual entourage. He was recounting, for what must have been the 20th time, how he'd scored the winning touchdown at Friday's game. His audience provided dutiful laughter at all the right moments. Kayla waited until the warning bell scattered the group. As Chad shouldered his backpack, she approached from his blind spot and leaned casually against the locker next to his. "You're Chad, right?" He turned, surprised, then smiled when he saw her. His eyes moved appreciatively over her face and body. "Yeah, you're the new girl." He leaned in slightly. "Kayla, isn't it?" She nodded, her expression pleasant but unreadable. "I saw you break Emily's pencils last week." The smile froze on his face. "What?" "Her special pencils, the ones with the grip." Kayla's voice remained conversational, almost friendly. "Must have taken some effort. They're designed not to break easily." Chad glanced around, but the hallway had emptied. When he looked back at Kayla, his expression had hardened. "Look, I don't know what you think you saw. I also saw that graffiti in the gym," Kayla continued as if he hadn't spoken. "Pretty scary, right? Someone's obviously pissed off." Chad snorted, regaining his confidence. "That was nothing, just some loser trying to scare people." "Yeah, probably." Kayla straightened up. "But here's some friendly advice. If I were you, I'd be careful. Lincoln might seem like your kingdom, but kingdoms fall." She took a small step closer, her voice dropping. "Do it again, break anything of hers, and you'll lose more than a scholarship." Chad's laugh was forced. "Is that a threat?" "No." Kayla smiled, a cold curving of lips that didn't reach her eyes. "Just physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction." She patted his shoulder lightly. "See you in history." She walked away, leaving Chad staring after her, unsettled, but trying not to show it. The following morning, the janitor found Chad locked in the gym supply closet. He was discovered at 6:30 a.m., dehydrated and shaken, with a bruised shoulder from repeatedly ramming the door. His phone was missing, and clutched in his hand was a single note written in red ink. "Round 1. Let's dance." When questioned by Principal Keller, Chad claimed he'd been working out late and must have accidentally locked himself in. No one believed him, but no one challenged the story either. His friends ribbed him mercilessly for getting trapped, but beneath the teasing ran an undercurrent of unease. Throughout the day, whispers spread across campus. First the graffiti, now this. Something was happening at Lincoln High, something that didn't follow the usual rules. In art class that afternoon, Emily arrived with a new look. She'd replaced her usual muted clothing with a bright blue sweater. Small silver hoops adorned her ears, and the tips of her brown hair were dyed a soft pink. When Mrs. Brennan commented on the change, Emily smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. "I felt like trying something different," she said. Kayla, working quietly at her own easel, gave no indication she'd noticed the change, but later, as they left class together, she said simply, "Blue's a good color on you." Emily's smile widened. "Thanks. I've had that sweater forever but never wore it." She hesitated, then added, "I'm entering the fall art contest." Kayla raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Emily's voice grew stronger. "My therapist says art is how I speak. Maybe it's time people heard me." The next day, A new student joined Hunter's lunch table, Lacey Williams, head cheerleader and daughter of a local business owner. Her blonde hair was always perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her smile dazzling. She'd been dating a college freshman until recently, but rumors of their breakup had circulated for weeks. When Hunter draped his arm around her shoulders, the social hierarchy of Lincoln High officially shifted. The king had a queen now. At first, Lacey seemed to fit perfectly into Hunter's world. She laughed at his jokes, cheered the loudest at his games, and posted constant photos of them together online. But by the second week, observant students noticed small changes. Lacey's smile sometimes faltered when Hunter mocked other students. She grew quiet when his jokes turned cruel. Once, she walked away entirely when Logan tripped a freshman. One evening, while looking through photos on Hunter's phone, Lacey found a deleted video. Her curiosity piqued. She recovered it using an app and watched in horrified silence as Emily Sawyer was drenched in fruit punch, the camera zooming in on her tearful face as laughter echoed in the background. Hunter's voice narrated the event, with mocking commentary. Lacey deleted the video again and said nothing, but the next day at school she sought out Emily between classes. "Hey," she said awkwardly. "I like your hair. The pink is cute." Emily stared at her in confusion. "Thanks. Lacey glanced around nervously. "If you ever need anything, let me know, okay?" Before Emily could respond, Lacey hurried away, leaving Emily bewildered by the strange interaction. After school, Kayla found herself alone in Mr. Reeves's classroom. She'd been summoned by a note left on her desk. "See me after final bell." When she entered, he was grading papers, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He gestured for her to take a seat without looking up. "Your essay on civil disobedience was excellent," he said finally, removing his glasses. "You have a strong grasp of the psychological elements behind social movements." Kayla said nothing. "You're new here, but you've already figured out how things work." Mr. Reeves leaned back in his chair. "Lincoln wasn't always like this. The culture has deteriorated over the past few years. Is that why you wanted to see me? To talk about school culture?" "I wanted to see you because you're carrying weight in your eyes." Mr. Reeves's voice softened. "I recognize it because I carried it once too. The burden of seeing injustice and feeling powerless to stop it." Kayla tensed. "I should go. My uncle's waiting." "Just a moment." Mr. Reeves held up a hand. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm offering help if you need it. I don't." "All right." He nodded. "But my door is open. And Kayla, whatever you're doing, be careful. Some systems don't break easily. They break you first." That night, Kayla followed Logan Peterson to a diner 2 miles from school. She sat in a corner booth, baseball cap pulled low, nursing a soda as she observed Logan and his friends from the basketball team. They were loud, ordering multiple rounds of fries and milkshakes, flirting with the waitresses. As the evening wore on and the diner emptied, their voices grew louder, their laughter more raucous. "You should have seen her face," Logan was saying, gesturing with a fry. "When Chad called her diaper girl in chemistry, I thought she was going to cry right there." "She's such a freak," another boy agreed. "Always drawing people like some kind of creep." "Maybe she's got a crush on you, Logan," a third boy suggested, causing explosive laughter. "Hell no," Logan retorted. "I'd rather die than touch the wheelchair freak." The conversation continued in this vein for another 20 minutes. Kayla remained still, her phone resting on the table, recording every word. When the boys finally paid their bill and left, she waited 5 minutes before following. At home, she edited the audio file, removing background noise and enhancing the voices until every hateful word was crystal clear. Then she created an anonymous email account and sent the recording to Principal Keller with the subject line, "Evidence of Harassment at Lincoln High." The next morning, Logan was called to the principal's office during first period. The summons caused a ripple of whispers. Students exchanged theories throughout the morning, but when Logan returned before lunch, smirking as he took his seat, it was clear nothing had changed. "Principal wanted to talk to me about some bullshit harassment claim," he told his friends loudly enough for others to hear. My dad sorted it out. No big deal. From her seat across the room, Kayla watched him with cold eyes, her jaw clenched so tightly it ached. The annual fall art contest was a significant event at Lincoln High. The winner received a $500 scholarship, and their work was displayed in the main hallway for the rest of the year. Emily had spent weeks on her entry, a series of interconnected panels showing human hands reaching toward each other, some touching, others just out of reach. The central panel featured two hands nearly connecting, one from a wheelchair. The day before the submission deadline, Emily rolled into the art room to put the finishing touches on her work, only to stop short in the doorway. Her canvas lay on the floor, shredded into strips. The vibrant colors she'd so carefully mixed were now streaked with dark stains that smelled sharply of urine. Mrs. Brennan found her there, staring at the ruined artwork in silent shock. "Oh, Emily," the teacher gasped. "What happened?" Emily shook her head, unable to form words around the lump in her throat. Mrs. Brennan immediately reported the incident, but with no witnesses and no security cameras in the art room, there was little to be done. She offered Emily an extension, but with less than 24 hours remaining, there wasn't enough time to recreate weeks of work. Kayla found Emily in the bathroom an hour later, tears streaming down her face as she tried to salvage scraps of her painting. "They went too far," Emily whispered, her voice breaking. "I wasn't hurting anyone. I just wanted to create something beautiful." Kayla surveyed the damage in silence, her expression betraying nothing of the rage building inside her. Without a word, she turned and walked out, leaving Emily surrounded by the ruins of her art. That night, while the custodial staff cleaned the halls of Lincoln High, Kayla moved with silent purpose through the emptied building. She wore latex gloves and a dark hoodie pulled over her hair. In her backpack was an intricate device constructed from household items, a simple mechanism designed to create maximum impact. Logan's locker was easy to find, number 117, plastered with basketball team stickers. Kayla worked quickly, installing her creation inside, then slipped back out the way she'd come, undetected by the single security camera that swept the main hallway at predictable intervals. The next morning, Logan arrived at school early for basketball practice. When he opened his locker, a small balloon filled with red dye burst, splattering his Letterman jacket and several nearby students. As he stumbled back in shock, a cascade of paper fluttered to the floor, printouts of text messages and group chat conversations in which he'd mocked Emily and other students. Key phrases were highlighted in yellow: wheelchair freak, diaper girl, and worse. Taped to the inside of the locker door was a handwritten note. "Still laughing?" Logan's face drained of color as students gathered around, reading the fallen messages. Some looked disgusted. Others pulled out phones to take pictures. By third period, the entire school knew what had happened. The whispers followed Logan everywhere, and for the first time he was the one avoiding eye contact in the hallways. That evening, Kayla trained harder than usual in her uncle's garage, attacking the heavy bag with controlled fury. Sweat-soaked, her tank top as she executed combination after combination, her breathing steady, her focus absolute. Darius watched from the doorway, concern etched in his features. "You're pushing too hard," he said finally. "Your body needs rest." Kayla continued, punching, not breaking rhythm. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." Darius stepped into her line of sight. "You've got that look again. The one you had after Andre died. That cold fire." Kayla stopped, breathing hard. "I'm handling it." "Are you?" "Because your school called today. They're noticing changes in your behavior. Less sleep, more aggression." "I said I'm handling it," Kayla snapped. Darius sighed heavily. "This isn't Chicago, Kayla. Whatever's happening, whatever you're planning, remember why I brought you here. You're supposed to teach fear, not become it." Kayla unwrapped her hands slowly, not meeting his eyes. "Some people only understand fear. And what happens after they're afraid of you? What does that solve? You wouldn't understand." "Try me." Darius placed a hand on her shoulder. I lost Andre too, remember? He was my nephew. My blood. For a moment, Kayla seemed about to speak, to share the burden she carried. Then her expression closed again. I need a shower, she said quietly, moving past him toward the door. Darius watched her go, his eyes sad. The fire that consumes your enemies, he murmured, usually burns you too. But Kayla was already gone, the echo of her footsteps fading down the hallway. On Monday, Emily rolled into world history class 5 minutes early. She positioned her wheelchair at her usual desk, arranging her textbook and notebook with careful precision. Students filtered in gradually, their usual morning chatter filling the room. When Hunter entered with Chad and Logan, they moved directly to their seats without acknowledging Emily, a welcome change from their typical mocking greetings. The red dye incident had dampened their enthusiasm for public cruelty, at least temporarily. Mr. Reeves began class with his usual dry wit, discussing the fall of the Roman Empire with surprising passion. As he distributed worksheets for group work, Hunter leaned over and flicked Emily's pencil off her desk. Oops, he whispered, his smile malicious. Butterfingers. Emily stared at the pencil on the floor just out of her reach. Then something shifted in her expression. She raised her hand. Mr. Reeves? The teacher looked up. Yes, Emily? Hunter just knocked my pencil on the floor deliberately. Her voice was clear and steady, louder than she'd ever spoken in class. And I'd like it replaced since it's my adaptive pencil from occupational therapy. The classroom went silent. Students turned to stare, shocked by the direct accusation. Hunter's face flushed. I didn't touch her stupid pencil. Yes, you did. Emily continued, her gaze unwavering. Just like you destroyed my art contest entry and poured fruit punch on me in the cafeteria. Mr. Reeves set down his papers. Hunter, is this true? She's lying, Hunter insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. She probably dropped it herself. I can't drop things backward, Emily pointed out. Physics doesn't work that way. A few students snickered. Across the room, Kayla watched the exchange with quiet intensity. Hunter, pick up the pencil and give Emily a new one from my desk, Mr. Reeves directed. And see me after class. Hunter glared at Emily as he retrieved her pencil, then slammed a new one on her desk. For the rest of the period, tension hung in the air like static electricity. When the bell rang, students hurried out, eager to spread the news that Emily Sawyer had finally fought back. In the hallway, Kayla caught up with Emily. That was brave, she said quietly. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her backpack. I thought I was going to throw up. But you didn't. A small smile touched Emily's lips. No, I didn't. Later that afternoon, Kayla intercepted Lacey. Outside the gym as cheerleading practice ended. Can we talk? Kayla asked without preamble. Lacey glanced around nervously. About what? Hunter. Lacey's perfect posture stiffened. What about him? You know what he is, Kayla said bluntly. You've seen it. Lacey fidgeted with her gym bag strap. I don't know what you're talking about. The video of Emily. The one with the punch. You found it on his phone. Lacey's eyes widened. How did you? Doesn't matter. What matters is what you're going to do about it. What can I do? He's Hunter Mills. His dad practically owns half the school board. That doesn't make him untouchable. Kayla's expression softened slightly. You seem like a decent person, Lacey. Do you really want to be with someone? Who hurts people for fun? Lacey bit her lip, tears threatening. It's complicated. No, it's not. Kayla stepped closer. It's actually really simple. You either stand with people like Emily, or you stand with people who torture her. There's no middle ground. She walked away, leaving Lacey alone with her thoughts. That night, Lacey sat cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through Hunter's text messages. She had his password. He'd given it to her as a show of trust when they first started dating. What? It seemed romantic, then now felt like a burden as she uncovered layer after layer of cruelty. There were group chats dedicated to mocking specific students, videos of pranks that went beyond teasing into deliberate humiliation, screenshots of private messages obtained through deception and shared for mockery. Most disturbing were the conversations about students who had left Lincoln High, kids who had transferred suddenly or stopped attending altogether. In one thread, Hunter and Logan joked about a boy named Justin who had moved away last year. "No one misses that loser," Hunter had written. "Bet he's still crying about his backpack in the toilet." Lacey's research extended beyond Hunter's phone. She created a timeline of incidents, noting patterns. The targets were always vulnerable in some way, isolated, different, or already struggling. The attacks escalated when victims showed signs of breaking. And most telling of all, the behaviors had only worsened over time, with adults consistently looking the other way. By midnight, Lacey had compiled dozens of screenshots, organized by victim. She saved everything to a secure cloud folder, then deleted all traces of her search from her devices. Her hands shook as she set her phone down. For the first time in her high school career, Lacey Williams, the perpetually pleasant, never controversial cheerleader, was taking a stand. The following day, Kayla found a note tucked into her history textbook. In neat, bubbly handwriting it read, "I have everything. What do we do now? L." After school, they met behind the bleachers. Lacey looked different somehow, her usual perfect appearance slightly disheveled, dark circles under her eyes suggesting a sleepless night. "There's more than I thought," she said without greeting. "It's not just Emily. It's been going on for years." Kayla nodded. "I figured as much. There was a boy 2 years ago, Justin Alvarez. He transferred to another district suddenly. According to these texts, Hunter and his friends bullied him mercilessly, stole his clothes during gym, destroyed his assignments, filled his backpack with toilet water." "Was that all?" Lacey hesitated. "No, there's something else, something worse." She unlocked her phone and showed Kayla a particular conversation. "His sister confirmed it last night. Justin tried to kill himself after he left Lincoln. He's okay now, but he was hospitalized for weeks." Kayla's expression hardened as she read the messages. "Did you keep copies of everything?" "Yes. Multiple backups." "Good." Kayla handed the phone back. "Excellent work, Lacey." Lacey seemed surprised by the praise. "What do we do with it?" "First, we need to understand how deep this goes. The boys are protected because the adults let them be protected. We need to know who's covering up what." Later that week, Mr. Reeves requested a meeting with Principal Keller. He brought with him a folder containing evidence Lacey had anonymously shared. Screenshots, dates, victim names. "This is a serious pattern of harassment," Reeves argued, spreading the papers across Keller's desk. "Multiple students over multiple years." Principal Keller, a balding man with perpetually loosened ties, barely glanced at the documents. "These are just text messages between teenagers. Kids talk trash. It doesn't mean anything." "One of these kids attempted suicide, Jim." Keller waved a dismissive hand. "That happened after he left our school. We have no evidence it was related to anything that occurred here." "Are you serious right now? We have screenshots of Hunter Mills literally telling his friends they drove Justin to leave." "Screenshots can be manipulated, and even if they are legitimate, this is normal teenage boy behavior." Keller leaned back in his chair. "Boys will be boys, Tom. They're just letting off steam." Reeves stared at him in disbelief. "What about Emily? Sawyer, the art vandalism, the physical harassment? Is that just letting off steam too?" "No one saw who damaged that art project." Keller's tone grew sharper. "And frankly, I'm starting to wonder why you're so invested in this. You seem to have a particular interest in targeting our star athletes." "I have a particular interest in protecting vulnerable students," Reeves shot back. "Well, unless you have concrete proof of who damaged that art project, there's nothing I can do." Keller gathered the papers and handed them back. "Now if you'll... Excuse me, I have a budget meeting to prepare for." As Reeves left the office, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Janet, it's Tom Reeves from Lincoln High. Remember that conversation we had about systemic issues in schools? I think I have a story for you." That weekend, Kayla traced the tire tracks of Hunter's distinctive Mustang to Baker's Point, a popular parking spot overlooking the town. As expected, the car was there, windows foggy with condensation. Hunter and Lacey were clearly visible inside, locked in an embrace. Kayla waited until they separated, then approached silently. When Hunter stepped out to retrieve something from the trunk, she made her move. She slid a folded note under the windshield wiper, then melted back into the shadows. Minutes later, Hunter returned to the driver's seat, noticing the paper as he settled in. "What's that?" Lacey asked, feigning ignorance. Hunter unfolded the note, his expression changing as he read the words written in bold red ink. "I'm coming. Bring your friends. Bring your lies. Let's end this at the bonfire." "What the hell?" he muttered, looking around frantically. "Where did this come from? What is it?" Lacey placed a hand on his arm, feeling him tense beneath her touch. "Nothing." Hunter crumpled the paper and shoved it into his pocket. "Let's get out of here." As they drove away, Lacey noticed his knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his usual confident smirk replaced by a tight-lipped grimace. For the first time since she'd known him, Hunter Mills looked afraid. The annual fall bonfire was Lincoln High's biggest social event. Held at the edge of the football field, it drew nearly the entire student body with promises of music, food, and the ritualistic burning of an effigy of their rival school's mascot. It was traditionally where social hierarchies were cemented, couples became official, and memorable moments were created. This year, anticipation buzzed through the school with an added edge of tension. Rumors of confrontations, mysterious notes, and a possible showdown had transformed the usual excitement into something electric and unpredictable. In Emily's home, a different kind of tension reigned. She stood before her mirror, staring at her reflection with uncertainty. Lacey had helped her select a bright red dress with flowing sleeves and a neckline that showed off her collarbones. Her brown hair, normally pulled back in a practical ponytail, now fell in soft curls around her face. Subtle makeup enhanced her features, making her eyes look larger, her cheekbones more defined. "You look beautiful," her mother said from the doorway, her expression a mixture of pride and concern. "But are you sure about this? You've never wanted to go to the bonfire before." Emily smoothed the fabric over her lap. "I'm sure, Mom. I need to be there tonight." "Because of that new friend of yours?" "Kayla?" Emily met her mother's eyes in the mirror. "Because of me. Because if she's going to fight for me, I need to show I'm not hiding anymore." Her mother crossed the room and placed her hands on Emily's shoulders. "Just promise me you'll call if anything happens, anything at all. I promise." Emily reached up and squeezed her mother's hand. "But I think tonight is going to change everything." Across town, Kayla prepared differently. No flashy outfit, no makeup. Instead, she methodically checked her phone, ensuring the group chat screenshots were accessible with a single tap. She tested the small wireless speakers she'd acquired, confirming they could be controlled remotely through her phone's Bluetooth. Finally, she slipped on a plain black hoodie, nondescript, practical, allowing freedom of movement. This wasn't about looking good. This was about ending something. Uncle Darius watched from the hallway as she packed her backpack. "You're not planning to fight at this bonfire, are you?" Kayla zipped the bag closed. "Not unless I have to." "That's not a no." "No, it's not." She looked up at him, her expression resolute. "Some things need to be finished, Uncle D. Some wrongs need to be made right." Darius sighed heavily. "Just remember what I taught you. Fighting should always be the last resort, not the first option." "I remember." Kayla shouldered her backpack. "But tonight I'm hoping the truth will do the fighting for me." As darkness fell across Lincoln, the fire began to rise. The stage was set. The players were ready. And the reckoning that had been building for weeks was finally at hand. The annual Lincoln High bonfire transformed the football field into a patchwork of shadows and golden light. Flames leaped 15 feet into the air, sending sparks spiraling toward the star-filled sky. Music thumped from speakers positioned around the perimeter, while tables laden with snacks and drinks attracted crowds of hungry teenagers. Students clustered in their usual social groupings, athletes near the front, showing off for underclassmen, band kids keeping rhythm with the music, honor students discussing college applications with forced casualness. The ritual was as familiar as the changing seasons, yet something felt different tonight. An undercurrent of tension rippled through the crowd as students glanced repeatedly toward the parking lot, waiting for certain arrivals. Hunter, Chad, and Logan stood near the drinks table, their usual boisterous energy notably subdued. Hunter's eyes continually scanned the crowd, his jaw tight. Chad kept checking his phone, while Logan nursed a cup of punch without his typical swagger. "Relax," Chad muttered. "It's probably just someone messing with us." "Yeah? Like someone messed with you in the supply closet?" Hunter snapped. "Like someone rigged Logan's locker to explode?" "We don't know it's the same person," Logan argued, but his voice lacked conviction. Hunter tossed his empty cup into the fire. "It has to be that new girl, Kayla." "She's got no proof of anything," Chad insisted. "And even if she did, who'd believe? Her over us?" Hunter didn't look convinced. "Where's Lacey? She should have been here by now." As if on cue, a ripple of whispers spread through the crowd near the field entrance. Students stepped aside, creating a path for a vision in red that moved steadily toward the bonfire's glow. Emily Sawyer rolled forward in her wheelchair, transformed. Her red dress caught the firelight, making her appear to be wrapped in flame. Her hair fell in glossy curls, and her usually downcast eyes now met the stares of her peers with unwavering directness. She navigated through the crowd with quiet dignity, stopping only when she reached the inner circle near the fire. The whispers intensified. Students pointed discreetly, nudging each other in disbelief. "Is that Emily? She looks different. Who did her makeup? She's actually pretty." Emily heard the comments but didn't acknowledge them. She positioned her wheelchair at a perfect angle to view both the fire and the three boys who had tormented her for years. When she caught Hunter's eye, she didn't flinch away as she once would have. Instead, she held his gaze until he looked down first. From the shadows beyond the fire's reach, Kayla watched. Her black hoodie rendered her nearly invisible against the darkness of the trees. Her eyes scanned methodically, tracking movements, monitoring positions, checking the wireless speakers she'd hidden earlier that day beneath the DJ table and near the refreshment stand. She wasn't there for a fistfight. She was there for justice, delivered with surgical precision. The bonfire reached its peak as Lacey arrived, not at Hunter's side as expected, but alone. She moved through the crowd with purpose, her cheerleader's smile replaced by grim determination. She wore a simple blue dress, her blonde hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. Without acknowledging Hunter's attempts to catch her attention, Lacey walked directly to the small stage where the DJ had set up. She whispered something to him, and he reluctantly handed over the microphone. The music faded. Conversation stuttered to a halt as Lacey tapped the mic, creating a sharp feedback that cut through the night air. "Hey everyone," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Before we burn the West Side Warrior, I wanted to thank our amazing football team for their dedication this season." Relief visibly washed over Hunter's face. This was normal, expected, Lacey playing her role as supportive girlfriend. "Especially," Lacey continued, pulling her phone from her pocket, "I want to highlight the leadership of our captain, Hunter Mills." Hunter started moving toward the stage, ready to accept his accolades with practiced humility. "Hunter has taught us all some valuable lessons," Lacey said, her voice hardening slightly. "About power, about consequences, and about what happens when no one speaks up." She connected her phone to the sound system and pressed play. Logan's voice suddenly boomed across the field. You should have seen her face when Chad called her diaper girl in chemistry. Another voice, clearly Hunter's. "We should steal her wheelchair next, leave her crawling on the floor like a baby." Chad, laughing. "Remember when we destroyed her art project? She cried for like an hour in the bathroom." The crowd froze in collective shock. Hunter lunged for the stage, but several football players, equally stunned by the revelations, blocked his path instinctively. "Turn it off!" he shouted, his face contorted with rage and embarrassment. Before Lacey could respond, the audio switched to a different recording, this one playing simultaneously through the main speakers and the hidden wireless units Kayla had positioned earlier. How many had to bleed before anyone cared? The voice was Kayla's, clear and measured, cutting through the chaos. Students turned in confusion, trying to locate the source. Lacey stepped away from the mic, moving deliberately to stand beside Emily's wheelchair. She placed a hand on the other girl's shoulder in a gesture of solidarity that rippled through the stunned audience. From the darkness emerged Kayla, walking slowly into the firelight. The crowd parted automatically, creating a path directly toward Hunter, Chad, and Logan. Her expression was calm, almost detached as she surveyed the scene she had orchestrated. When she spoke, her voice carried without effort, silencing the murmurs that had begun to swell. "You hurt her because you thought no one would stand with her," Kayla said, addressing Hunter directly. "But you forgot. People like you are loud, until someone makes you quiet." Hunter's face flushed dark with fury. "You think anyone's going to believe this setup? Do you know who my father is?" "I don't care who your father is," Kayla replied evenly. "I care what you did, what you all did." Hunter lunged forward suddenly, using his height and weight to intimidate as he'd done countless times before. "You don't know what you're messing with, new girl." Kayla didn't retreat. She shifted her weight almost imperceptibly, then caught Hunter's wrist as he reached to shove her. With a fluid motion that appeared almost effortless, she used his own momentum to flip him onto the ground. The crowd gasped collectively. Hunter Mills, star quarterback and untouchable king of Lincoln High, lay sprawled in the dirt at the feet of a girl half his size. Kayla stepped back, keeping her hands open and visible. She wasn't gloating, wasn't escalating. She had made her point and was now turning to leave. "Crazy bitch!" Logan shouted, charging at her from behind. What happened next occurred so quickly that many students later disagreed about the precise sequence of events. All anyone knew for certain was that Logan attacked, Kayla defended, and within seconds, Logan was on his knees, clutching his wrist as tears of pain sprang to his eyes. Kayla hadn't thrown a single punch. She had simply neutralized the threat, with practiced efficiency. In the distance, police sirens wailed. Someone, likely a concerned parent chaperone, had called 911 at the first sign of confrontation. As blue and red lights flashed at the edge of the field, students scattered in different directions. But something unexpected happened as the police approached. Instead of running, several students moved forward, phones extended. "Officers, you need to see this," a junior girl called out, showing a screen displaying the group chat screenshots. "They've been bullying kids for years." Another student approached with their own evidence. "I have video of them destroying Emily's art project. I was too scared to say anything before." A senior boy stepped forward. "Justin Alvarez was my friend. He tried to kill himself because of what they did to him. I'll testify." As the police sorted through the crowd, taking statements and reviewing evidence, Kayla stood quietly beside Emily and Lacey. The three girls, so different in background and experience, formed a tableau that many would remember long after the embers of the bonfire had cooled. Emily looked up at Kayla, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you," she said simply. Kayla shook her head. "Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning." Monday morning arrived with the school in chaos. Police officers occupied Principal Keller's office, conducting interviews with students, faculty, and staff. Yellow police tape cordoned off sections of the hallway where students had opened their phones to show authorities the evidence they'd been too frightened to share before. Kayla sat calmly in a small conference room, answering questions. With straightforward precision, yes, she had recorded the conversation at the diner. No, she hadn't physically harmed Chad in the supply closet. She had simply locked the door and taken his phone to prevent him calling for help. Yes, she had defensive training. No, she had not initiated physical contact with either Hunter or Logan. Down the hall, Emily shared her own story. She displayed her artwork, both the ruined original and photographs of what it had looked like before. She described years of torment, of navigating hallways in fear, of adults looking the other way. "Why didn't you report this sooner?" an officer asked gently. Emily's laugh held no humor. "I did. We all did. Nobody listened." By afternoon, the investigation had expanded beyond the boy's behavior to include the school's handling of previous complaints. When the district superintendent arrived, his face grim beneath silver hair, Principal Keller's bluster finally faltered. "Jim, I've got reporters asking why multiple harassment complaints were buried," the superintendent said, closing Keller's office door firmly behind him. "I've got parents threatening lawsuits and a police detective suggesting criminal negligence. Please tell me there's an explanation that doesn't end with you cleaning out this office today." Keller had no answer that could save his career. While the official investigation unfolded at school, Kayla pursued her own resolution. She tracked down Justin Alvarez's younger sister, Megan, who still attended Lincoln High as a sophomore. They met at a coffee shop off campus, away from the swirling rumors and speculation. "I never knew the full story," Kayla said after introducing herself. "Just that he was bullied before he left." Megan stared into her untouched hot chocolate. "It started in freshman year. Hunter and his friends targeted him because he wore a leg brace after surgery. Called him gimpy. Stole his crutches. Tripped him in the cafeteria." Her voice hardened. "Sound familiar?" "Very." "After his cast came off, they wouldn't stop. It was like they'd found the perfect victim and couldn't give it up. They'd follow him into bathrooms, dump water on him during tests, steal his clothes. During gym," Megan's hands trembled slightly, "my parents complained, multiple times. Nothing changed. So you moved? We thought a fresh start would help, but the damage was done. 2 weeks after starting his new school, Justin took all his medication at once." Tears spilled down Megan's cheeks. "He survived, thank God, but he's never been the same." Kayla reached across the table and took Megan's hand. "I'm so sorry." "Why?" Megan asked suddenly. "Why did you get involved? You didn't even know Emily or Justin." Kayla was silent for a long moment, then slowly rolled up her sleeve to reveal the thin scar on her forearm. "My brother was killed 3 years ago," she said quietly. "Not by bullies, by a case of mistaken identity. 5 boys jumped him thinking he was someone else. I was there, I saw it happen." "That's awful," Megan whispered. "What was worse was that people walked by. They saw what was happening and kept going. Nobody helped. Nobody cared." Kayla traced the scar with her fingertip. "When I saw what was happening to Emily, I couldn't be one of those people again. I couldn't just walk by." They cried together then, sharing the grief of siblings damaged by others' cruelty. The next day, the school newspaper published a special edition. The headline read, "Pattern of Abuse Uncovered at Lincoln High." Beneath it was a student journalist's deep dive into Kayla's background, her brother's death in Chicago, her time in foster care, and most dramatically, footage from underground MMA fights she had participated in a year earlier. The revelation split the student body. Some saw Kayla as a dangerous vigilante who had brought violence into their school. Others viewed her as a necessary force of justice in a system that had repeatedly failed its most vulnerable members. The hallways buzzed with debate until Uncle Darius arrived, requesting an opportunity to address the school. In the crowded gymnasium, he stood tall and dignified, his voice carrying to every corner without a microphone. "My niece came to me broken after watching her brother die," he began, silencing the whispers immediately. "She was angry, hurt, and lost. She blamed herself for not being able to save him." Darius scanned the assembled faces, his expression solemn. "I taught her to fight not so she could hurt others, but so she would never feel that helpless again. I taught her control, discipline, respect. She didn't come to your school looking for trouble. She found it and refused to look away, like too many of you have been doing for years." From her seat in the front row, Kayla watched her uncle defend her with a lump in her throat. She had expected him to be angry, disappointed. Instead, he stood as her champion, bearing witness to her pain and her purpose. "She didn't fight to hurt," Darius concluded. "She fought because nobody else would." The day after Darius's speech, a photograph appeared on social media. It showed Emily in her red dress from the bonfire, flanked by Lacey and Kayla. The three girls stared directly into the camera, their expressions resolute and unapologetic. The caption read simply, "Stand with them." The image spread rapidly beyond Lincoln High, catching the attention of disability rights advocates who reached out to Emily about featuring her story and artwork in an upcoming accessibility exhibition. Suddenly, the quiet girl who had been invisible for years was being seen and heard on a national platform. Hunter's father, Richard Mills, attempted damage control through his usual channels. He called in favors, threatened to withhold donations, reminded people of his influence. But when a regional journalist questioned him about previous incidents he had helped cover up, including paying for Justin Alvarez's family to relocate rather than addressing his son's behavior, Richard Mills went uncharacteristically silent. Despite growing public support, the school district felt compelled to enforce its zero-tolerance policy on physical altercations. Kayla received a 2-week suspension for her involvement in the bonfire incident, though the administration privately acknowledged that her actions had likely prevented further harm. Students protested the decision by wearing black hoodies with "Stand with Kayla" written across the back. Mr. Reeves submitted his resignation in solidarity, stating he could no longer work in a system that punished those who protected the vulnerable, while enabling those who harmed them. On her final day before suspension, Kayla found Emily waiting by her locker. The hallway was empty, classes having already started. "Why me?" Emily asked without preamble. "Out of all the kids they've hurt, why did you choose to help me?" Kayla closed her locker slowly. "Because when my brother died, no one stood up. Not even me, not really." Her voice caught slightly. "I needed to believe someone still could." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I was so scared for so long, I thought it would never end." "I know. My mom wants to meet you, to thank you properly." Kayla smiled, a real smile that softened her entire face. "I'd like that." Emily hesitated, then opened her arms. Kayla stepped forward and they embraced for the first time, the barrier between them finally broken. As the 2 weeks of Kayla's suspension passed, the media spotlight on Lincoln High gradually dimmed. Reporters moved on to other stories, other scandals. Principal Keller resigned, citing personal reasons. Hunter, Chad, and Logan received in-school suspensions while awaiting disciplinary hearings. Their previous untouchable status evaporated. But, inside the school, something fundamental had shifted. The silence was broken. Other victims began to come forward with their stories, emboldened by Emily's courage and Kayla's actions. Students who had previously been bystanders found their voices, refusing to enable cruelty through their silence. Reckoning had begun. Messy, painful, but necessary. And in the midst of it all, Kayla walked the hallways again, no longer hiding in shadows, no longer alone in her fight. The game had changed, and there was no going back. Spring arrived at Lincoln, High with fresh paint on the walls and new policies in the student handbook. The interim principal, Dr. Elaine Foster, had spent her first months implementing restorative justice practices and mandatory sensitivity training for faculty and staff. Posters promoting inclusivity and anti-bullying messages replaced the faded, sports championship banners in the main hallway. But the most striking change was visible in the art display case near the front entrance. There, illuminated by carefully positioned lights, hung Emily Sawyer's new series of paintings titled, "Watch Me Roll." The collection depicted wheelchair users in moments of power and beauty, racing, dancing, creating, living. The centerpiece showed a girl in a red dress, her face lifted toward a night sky where stars formed the words, "Still Rising." Emily stood, or rather, sat, at the center of this transformation. Her art had caught the attention of a disability rights blogger, which led to features in several online magazines and eventually an interview on a popular podcast about accessibility in education. "My wheelchair isn't a limitation," she told the host, her voice steady and clear. "It's part of who I am. The real limitation was other people's perception, their inability to see me as a complete person." The podcast went viral, shared by disability advocates and educators across the country. Emily's inbox filled with messages from other disabled teens thanking her for giving voice to their experiences. A university art program reached out about a scholarship opportunity for the following year. At school, Emily no longer ate lunch alone. A rotating group of students now joined her table, drawn by her quiet confidence and sharp observations. The pink in her hair had become a full rainbow of colors, and her wardrobe had expanded to include bold patterns and statement jewelry. She still sketched people constantly, but now she showed them her work, transforming what had once been a secret comfort into a bridge for connection. Down the hall from Emily's display, another transformation was taking place. Lacey Williams had converted an unused classroom into headquarters for a new student organization, the Echo Circle. Its mission was simple but powerful: to amplify the voices of those who had been silenced and to foster a community where everyone belonged. "I was part of the problem for too long," Lacey admitted during their first meeting. "I chose popularity over doing what was right. I can't change that, but I can work to make sure it never happens again." The club quickly became the most diverse group on campus, attracting students from every social category: athletes seeking redemption, former targets finding courage, observers tired of looking away. They organized workshops on bystander intervention, created an anonymous reporting system for bullying incidents, and initiated a mentorship program pairing upperclassmen with vulnerable freshmen. Meanwhile, the legal consequences for Hunter and Logan continued to unfold. With multiple testimonies and documented evidence of years of harassment, both faced juvenile charges for assault and cyberbullying. Chad, recognizing the shifting tide, had accepted a plea deal, agreeing to testify against his former friends, in exchange for a lighter sentence of community service and mandatory counseling. During his statement to investigators, Chad revealed additional incidents that had been covered up by school administration, including a physical assault on a freshman, 2 years earlier that Principal Keller had dismissed as roughhousing. The revelation prompted the school board to launch a comprehensive audit of all disciplinary records from Keller's tenure. For Kayla, life had both settled and expanded in unexpected ways. Her suspension had ended without fanfare, but her return to school was marked by a different kind of attention. Students no longer saw her as just the new girl or the fighter, but as someone who had fundamentally changed their community. She maintained her quiet demeanor, still preferring observation to participation in most settings. But her isolation had ended. She sat with Emily at lunch, contributed thoughtfully in classes, and occasionally even smiled, a rare expression that transformed her serious face. One afternoon, as Kayla left school, a woman approached her in the parking lot. Tall and muscular with close-cropped hair and purposeful movements, she introduced herself as Deanna Wright, a retired MMA champion who now trained promising young fighters. "I saw footage of your underground matches from Chicago," Deanna said, without preamble. "You've got raw talent, but more importantly, you've got control, something most young fighters never master." Kayla shook her head. "I don't fight anymore." "What you did at the bonfire wasn't fighting, it was defending. There's a difference." Deanna handed her a business card. "You're not a weapon, Kayla. You're a storm, controlled, directed, with purpose. If you ever want to channel that properly, call me." Kayla slipped the card into her pocket without comment, but later that night, she took it out again, running her fingers over the embossed lettering as she considered possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to imagine before. Across town, another doctor was opening. Mr. Reeves, after his principled resignation from Lincoln High, had redirected his energies into creating a weekend mentorship program for at-risk youth. Using personal savings and a small grant from a local foundation, he rented a storefront space and transformed it into The Corner, part study hall, part community center, part safe haven. When he called Kayla to offer her a position as an assistant instructor, she accepted immediately. "I need someone who understands these kids," Reeves explained as he showed her around the modest space. "Someone who knows what it feels like to fight back, and the price that comes with it." 3 times a week after school, Kayla worked with middle schoolers who reminded her painfully of herself 3 years earlier, angry, hurting, looking for somewhere to belong. She taught them basic self-defense, not as a means of aggression, but as a path to confidence and security. More importantly, she listened to their stories, offering the acknowledgement she had once desperately needed. "You don't have to fight with your fists," she told them. "Sometimes the bravest fight is using your voice when everyone else is silent." As spring progressed, Emily faced a decision she never thought she'd have to make: whether to forgive one of her tormentors. Chad Andrews had requested a meeting through his counselor, wanting to apologize face-to-face as part of his rehabilitation program. After considerable thought and consultation with her therapist, Emily agreed to meet him at a local cafe with her mother seated at a nearby table. Chad arrived early, nervous and diminished without his usual pack of followers. When Emily rolled in, he stood awkwardly, unsure of proper etiquette. "You can sit," she said simply, positioning her wheelchair across from him. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Chad began, his voice breaking slightly. "I know you didn't have to." "I didn't," Emily agreed. "So make it worth my time." Chad nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm sorry, Emily, not just for the pencils or the fruit punch, but for all of it. For years of making your life hell, for laughing when Hunter targeted you, for pretending I didn't see you hurting." Tears filled his eyes. "There's no excuse. I was weak and cruel, and I'll regret it forever." Emily studied him for a long moment. "Why did you do it?" "Because it was easier than standing up to Hunter. Because it felt good to have power over someone, when I felt powerless everywhere else." He wiped his eyes roughly. "But mostly because I never really saw you as a person. You were just a target. Something to make jokes about. And now I see what I did. I see you." He met her gaze directly. "I'm in therapy now. I'm learning about why I did those things, how to be better." Emily nodded slowly. "I accept your apology, Chad. I even forgive you because holding on to anger would only hurt me more." Her expression hardened slightly. "But know this, if you ever hurt someone again, if you ever stand by while someone else does, I won't be kind next time." It was the moment Emily fully claimed her power, not through art or words, but through the choice to offer mercy from a position of strength rather than fear. That evening, as Kayla trained with Uncle Darius in their garage, she noticed him watching her with an unusual intensity. "What?" she asked between combinations. Darius lowered the pads he'd been holding. "I'm proud of you, kid." The simple statement caught her off guard. "For what?" "For finding a better way to fight." He sat heavily on a nearby bench. "When Andre died, I thought I'd lost you both. You were so angry, so broken. I taught you to box because I needed to give you something to hold on to. I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't." Kayla stripped off her gloves, uncertain how to respond to this sudden vulnerability from her usually stoic uncle. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better after it happened," Darius continued, his voice rough with emotion. "Sorry I couldn't keep you out of those foster homes. Sorry I couldn't find you sooner." "Uncle D, let me finish." He took a deep breath. "What you did at that school, standing up for that girl, facing those boys, it was brave. But what you're doing now, helping those kids at Reeves's place, that's the real fight. That's what Andre would have wanted for you." For the first time since her brother's death, Kayla allowed herself to cry freely in front of someone else. Darius pulled her into a tight hug, his own tears falling silently as years of shared grief finally found release. As the school year drew to a close, Lincoln High held its annual Spring Awards ceremony. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as students and parents filled the seats. On stage, a row of chairs awaited the recipients of various academic and extracurricular honors. Dr. Foster presented Emily with the Artistic Achievement Award for her Watch Me Roll series, which had brought national attention to the school. The audience erupted in genuine applause as Emily accepted the plaque, briefly sharing how art had become her voice when words failed. Lacey received recognition for student leadership, her work with the Echo Circle having transformed the social climate of Lincoln High. She dedicated her award to those who found the courage to speak and those who finally listened. As the ceremony continued, Kayla sat quietly in the back row. She expected nothing. Her contributions had been too controversial, too complex for formal acknowledgement. She was there only to support her friends. But after the official awards concluded, a group of students approached the stage. Their leader, a sophomore named Marcus, who had once been targeted by Hunter's crew, carried a small wooden plaque. "We have one more presentation," he announced, his voice echoing through the suddenly quiet auditorium. "This isn't an official school award. It's from us, the students." Dr. Foster, surprised but intrigued, stepped aside. "Kayla Walker," Marcus called. "Would you come up here, please?" Stunned, Kayla hesitated before making her way to the stage. The plaque Marcus handed her was handcrafted, carved with the simple words, "To the storm who protected the quiet." "You showed us that standing up isn't always loud," Marcus said. "Loud, enough for everyone to hear. Sometimes it's just refusing to look away when others suffer. Thank you for seeing us." Kayla, never comfortable with attention, managed a brief nod of acknowledgement before returning to her seat, the unexpected token of appreciation clutched tightly in her hands. The following week, construction crews arrived at Lincoln High to install a brand new wheelchair ramp at the main entrance, a project Emily had requested in her freshman year, but had been repeatedly denied due to budget constraints. The funding came from a community accessibility grant, started with seed money donated anonymously in Kayla's name. On the last day of school, Emily presented Kayla with a gift, a leather-bound sketchbook filled with drawings she had created. Throughout the year, each page captured Kayla in various moments, focused in class, laughing with Emily, teaching at the corner, sitting alone beneath a tree. "You've been drawing me all this time?" Kayla asked, turning the pages with care. "I draw what matters," Emily replied simply. At the back of the sketchbook, Emily had written a final message. "You didn't just stand. You made the rest of us rise." Summer arrived with golden mornings and lingering twilights. For the first time, since moving to town, Kayla walked through the halls of Lincoln High on the final day of school with her head high, a genuine smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Students called greetings as she passed, not with the wary respect they'd shown after the bonfire incident, but with the easy familiarity of shared experience. A freshman girl shyly asked Kayla to sign her yearbook. A senior boy thanked her for helping his sister at the corner. Small moments of connection that would have seemed impossible months earlier. In the courtyard, Kayla spotted Emily surrounded by a group of friends, her wheelchair decorated with colorful streamers for the last day celebration. Emily's laugh carried across the space, uninhibited, joyful, free in a way Kayla had never heard before. This, she thought, was what winning actually looked like. The school year concluded with an assembly where Emily delivered a speech that would later be shared thousands of times online. Courage isn't about standing up. Sometimes it's about letting someone help you rise. As she spoke, her eyes found Kayla in the audience, acknowledging the journey they had taken together from isolation to community. "We talk about fighting bullying as if it's a war," Emily continued, her voice steady and clear. "But maybe it's more like building bridges, connecting people who felt disconnected, creating paths where barriers once stood. The true measure of our school isn't how many trophies we win, but how we treat those with the least power among us." The following week, Hunter Mills appeared in juvenile court for sentencing. The judge, unswayed by character references from football coaches and family friends, delivered a ruling that sent ripples through the community: 100 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, a restraining order keeping him away from his victims, and, most significantly, a ban from participating in college football. For his freshman year, Emily attended the sentencing with her mother and Kayla. As Hunter was led from the courtroom, his cocky facade finally cracked. His shoulders slumped with the weight of actual consequences, his eyes downcast instead of challenging. Emily watched without malice or satisfaction, only a quiet acknowledgement that justice, however imperfect, had finally been served. Later that month, Kayla received an unexpected opportunity. Deanna Wright called with news that a prestigious teen MMA training program in Atlanta had reviewed Kayla's unofficial matches and wanted to offer her a partial scholarship for their summer intensive. "It's legitimate," Deanna explained. "Safe, Regulated, focused on discipline and skill rather than just winning. You'd train with some of the best coaches in the country. Kayla hesitated. I'd have to leave town for 2 months. Yes. I have responsibilities here. The kids at the corner will still be here when you get back, Deanna pointed out. This is a chance to develop something for yourself, Kayla. Something positive that's just yours. Still uncertain, Kayla sought Emily's advice. They met at their favorite cafe, where Emily had become something of a local celebrity. You should go, Emily said without hesitation after hearing about the opportunity. Are you sure? It feels selfish, leaving after everything. Emily cut her off with a laugh. Selfish? Kayla, you fought for all of us. Now go fight for you. Meanwhile, Lincoln High's cheer squad was undergoing its own transformation under Lacey's continued leadership. The team had historically been known for its rigid hierarchies and exclusive membership, but the new application process emphasized character and commitment over popularity. Their first fundraiser of the summer supported a local organization providing adaptive sports equipment for disabled children. Emily was invited to co-design their new uniforms, incorporating subtle elements of accessibility awareness into the traditional school colors. It's not about erasing the past, Lacey explained to a local reporter covering the cheerleaders' community service. It's about acknowledging it and choosing to build something better. On her last day before leaving for Atlanta, Kayla walked across the empty school campus, allowing herself a moment of reflection. She paused beneath the oak tree near the football field where she had once sat alone, watching and waiting. Now children from the neighborhood played around its trunk, laughing and arguing and making up games, unconcerned about social hierarchies or invisible boundaries. She placed her hand against the rough bark, feeling the solid permanence of the tree against her palm. Something had changed here, not just in the rules or the leadership, but in the very atmosphere of the place. A shift from fear to possibility. Later that afternoon, Kayla visited her brother's grave for the first time since leaving Chicago. Uncle Darius had driven her 3 hours to the small cemetery, waiting respectfully in the car to give her privacy. She knelt beside the simple headstone, clearing away leaves and placing fresh flowers in the metal vase. From her pocket, she removed 3 items: her Lincoln High student ID, a small sketch Emily had drawn of Kayla and Andre together, created from photographs and Kayla's descriptions, and the wooden plaque from the students. I did it, Dre, she whispered, tracing his name with her fingertips. I fought back, not like I planned. Better. She smiled through tears. You'd have liked Emily. She sees people the way you did. The setting sun cast long shadows across the cemetery as Kayla said goodbye, walking back to the car with lighter steps than when she had arrived. The summer unfolded in a series of new beginnings. Emily traveled alone to her first college art interview, navigating public transportation and unfamiliar buildings with newfound confidence. The admissions officer was visibly impressed not just by her portfolio, but by her poise and self-advocacy. Lacey's leadership workshop for middle school, girls filled to capacity within days of being announced. The participants created a mural for the corner, painting themselves as superheroes whose powers included compassion, courage, and change. Mr. Reeves expanded his weekend program to include vocational training, partnering with local businesses to create internship opportunities for teenagers who needed second chances. And Kayla, miles away in Atlanta, poured herself into training, pushing her body and mind to new limits, discovering joy in the pure physical discipline of her sport. Each night she exchanged texts with Emily and Uncle Darius, sharing victories and frustrations from worlds that were beginning to broaden rather than narrow. On the final morning of summer, Emily wheeled herself to her favorite spot in the park, sketchbook balanced on her lap. She was drawing the playground where children navigated equipment with various abilities, some running, some using mobility devices, all equally absorbed in play. She smiled as she worked, remembering Kayla's words from one of their first real conversations. Power isn't loud, it moves. That movement continued, in Emily's art gaining recognition, in Lacey reforming systems from within, in Mr. Reeves creating new opportunities for vulnerable youth. Even in Kayla's absence, her impact remained, rippling outward in ways none of them could fully measure. As Emily completed her sketch, capturing a moment of connection between two children helping each other climb, she added a simple caption beneath the image. "You don't fight because you hate what's in front of you. You fight because you love what's behind you." The words echoed across time and distance to where Kayla stood in an Atlanta gym, sweat pouring down her face, eyes alive with purpose as she prepared for her first official match. She would carry this lesson forward, the knowledge that true strength came not from destroying enemies, but from protecting what mattered most. And what mattered, they had all discovered, was the courage to see each other clearly and the determination to create a world where everyone could rise. What would you risk to stand up for someone when everyone else looks away? The answer defines not just who we are, but the world we create together. If this story touched you, hit like and subscribe for more powerful narratives about courage, justice, and the strength to rise.